One of the largest Islamic groups in the world is the Muslim Brotherhood. What exactly is it, and what are their goals?
The Muslim Brotherhood is an international Islamic organization that was founded in Egypt in 1928 and is dedicated to restoring the Caliphate. The Caliph was the successor of Muhammad as the political, military, and spiritual leader of the Muslims. But the Caliphate was abolished by the secular Turkish government in 1924. The Brotherhood was founded in 1928 by Hassan al-Banna in Egypt in order to restore the Caliphate and the prerogatives of political Islam. It's now an international organization that operates in virtually every country in the world.
The Muslim Brotherhood is dedicated to not only restoring the Caliphate, but also to imposing Sharia law worldwide. They want to see strict Islamic law all over the world, even in Western democracies. Perhaps the Muslim Brotherhood is best understood by their creed, quote, "Allah is our objective, the Quran is our law, the Prophet is our leader, jihad is our way, and death for the sake of Allah is the highest of our aspirations," end quote. Frank Gaffney's group, the Center for Security Policy, notes in their book, Sharia, The Threat to America, that the Muslim Brotherhood is the root of the majority of Islamic terrorist groups in the world today, end quote. The Muslim Brotherhood has been operating in the United States for quite a while. Some disturbing information about it came to light in the 2008 court trial in Texas against the Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development, an Islamic charity. The group was convicted of funding terrorism.
The Holy Land trial was a historic event because Holy Land was an Islamic charity that was found guilty of raising money for the Muslim Brotherhood and for Hamas. Millions and millions of dollars. Named in the Holy Land trial were 300 Muslim Brotherhood proxy groups, unindicted co-conspirators. Among them, the Council of American Islamic Relations. And by the way, much of their leadership have been convicted and gone to jail. The Muslim American Society, the public face of the Muslim Brotherhood, established in 1993. The Holy Land trial was very important because it delivered a treasure trove of evidence against the infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood in America.
There were documents from the Muslim Brotherhood that were identified during the Holy Land Foundation trial that had been found by the FBI in a secret sub-basement in Annandale, Virginia. There were 80 banker boxes of documents that were essentially the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood in America.
There's an internal memorandum which was seized by the FBI from a Muslim Brotherhood operative in the United States, describing how those in the United States saw their work in America and the West. And what they regarded themselves as up to was what they called a grand jihad aimed at the elimination and destruction of Western civilization from within by sabotage. And that is what the mission of the Muslim Brotherhood and its tentacles in the United States is.
Andrew McCarthy, a retired prosecutor, successfully convicted the blind sheikh for the World Trade Center bombing of 1993. McCarthy wrote a book on the threat of radical Islam called The Grand Jihad, in reference to that particular memo. He describes the relationship between the Muslim Brotherhood and the Hamas, the notorious Palestinian terror group.
You see a lot of things about the Muslim Brotherhood working together with Hamas. And when I read that stuff, I always have to tell people, no. The Muslim Brotherhood isn't working with Hamas. Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. If you read Hamas's charter, they self-identify as a chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood in the Palestinian territories. So it's not true that the Muslim Brotherhood is opposed to terrorism. Hamas is a terrorist organization.
Critics of radical Islam note that many groups here in this country are front groups for the Muslim Brotherhood.
Nearly every other alphabet soup of Muslim organizations in the United States, CARE, ISNA, the Islamic Society of North America, ICNA, the Islamic Circle of North America. These are all Muslim Brotherhood front groups. This was proven in the Holy Land Foundation trial. They found a document dated 1991 in the basement of one of the defendants in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which names Muslim Brotherhood organizations and our allies. And all of these American organizations are on that list.
The Council on American Islamic Relations is portrayed as a neutral civil rights organization, universally by the media.
Yet CARE members were unindicted co-conspirators in the Holy Land trial. It was for a CARE function recently that U.S. Representative Ilhan Omar famously downplayed the infamous attacks of 9/11.
CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something.
Omar Ahmed, the former chairman of the board of CARE, was quoted in 1998. Speaking to a Muslim group in California, he said, "Islam is not in the United States to coexist with other religions. Islam is in the United States to become dominant, and the Quran the only law of the land." He now denies having said that.
The Muslim Brotherhood are situational terrorists. If terrorism is necessary and it's compelled by Sharia, and it's not counterproductive in the sense that it won't provoke such a blowback reaction that it actually rolls back any gains that the Islamist movement can make or has made, they're all for terrorism. But the strategy in the West is not primarily terrorism. It's primarily marching through the institutions.
The Muslim Brotherhood is perhaps the largest Muslim group in the world dedicated to Islamism, the spread of Islam throughout the world.
And the root cause, I believe, as a Muslim, is the ideology of Islamism, the ideology of wanting to create Islamic states that are supremacist, that believe there should be an Islamic law and government, that no other legal system takes precedence, that government should be ruled by clerics or those that believe in Islamism. And ultimately, until we start to build relationships with Muslims that are working against political Islam and the establishment of the Islamic State, I think we're going to continue chasing our tails domestically and globally for the next many generations to come.